Trinity Support is the penance brand of support gems, which is to say it's one of the most mechanically complicated supports in Path of Exile. There's a massive list of things that just don't work with Trinity Support, and only a few ways to use it effectively. Now, the skill gem goes into a long list of all those things that don't work. It doesn't do such a good job of telling you how it does work or what you should use it with. That said, the support gem has been gaining popularity over recent leagues, doubly so with the support for alternate ailments that was added recently and expanded with masteries. So it's easier than ever to scale a build that deals two different types of damage, such as cold and lightning or cold and fire. In this video, I'll be talking about the basic mechanics of Trinity Support, how it works, how you can use it along with its interaction with Prismatic skills, and then I'll try to give some real-world examples of the ways in which Trinity Support has been used in the past, and how that might inform the ways that you could use it in the future. If you find this video helpful, be sure to leave a like, and if you like the discussions of Path of Exile mechanics, build showcases, and the economy, be sure to sub to the channel, ring the bell, and join my Discord as we talk about a ton of stuff in there, and if you want to join the Discord, that'll be down in the description below. If you found this video helpful and want to give something back, then you can support me on Patreon, but more about that at the end of the video. For now, let's start talking about the long list of things you're not allowed to use with Trinity Support. The TLDR of this is, you cannot automate skills that are linked to Trinity in any way. The longer explanation is, Trinity cannot support triggered skills, such as those triggered by cast when damage taken or cast on crit strike. It also cannot support instant skills like Vortex or Frostblink. It can't support orb skills like Orb of Storms or Tornado. Why is Tornado an orb? I have no idea either. But Trinity also can't support brands. It's not very brand safe. It doesn't go with Storm or Armageddon brand. It doesn't work with skills that have a reservation, such as those linked to Spellslinger because you really wanted to automate Trinity because self-cast sucks. Sad day, you're out of luck. And finally, it cannot support skills used by totems, traps, mines, or minions. So what can you use Trinity with? Handcasting or self-attack. In other words, the most boring way to play Path of Exile. But at least Trinity helps you do enough damage to smile and hide the pain. So once you figured out what skills can actually be supported by Trinity, how does Trinity work? Trinity gives varying bonuses based on your elemental resonance, which is a mechanic that's added once you equip the gem to the skill. You can have between 0 and 50 resonance for each element, fire, cold, and lightning. Supported skills deal 3% more damage per 5 of your lowest resonance. In other words, if you have 50 fire, cold, and lightning resonance, the supported skill will deal 30% more elemental damage. On the other hand, if you have 50 fire, 50 cold, but only 15 lightning, the supported skill will deal 9% more elemental damage. If you have at least 25% of each elemental resonance, the supported skill will penetrate up to 16% of enemy elemental resistances based on gem level. This makes the gem very efficient for skills that deal multiple damage types, because multiple damage types usually suffer from a lack of penetration. So how does resonance work? The gem description's about as clear as that red milk Hillock keeps talking about. So I'll try to clarify. If you're not gaining resonance for a given element, you lose 5 resonance per second of that element. In other words, you want to always be gaining resonance. When you deal elemental damage, you gain resonance based off the highest damage type your skill dealt. If your skill's highest damage is fire, you'll gain 25 cold and lightning resonance over 2 seconds. If your skill's highest damage is lightning, you'll gain 25 cold and fire resonance. Or if your skill's highest damage is cold, you'll gain 25 fire and lightning resonance. This means you can't really get any benefit out of Trinity Support unless you're using 2 different skills, each of which deal 1 element type, or you're using 1 skill that deals 2 different element types. A very simple way to accomplish this is using a Prismatic skill like Elemental Hit or Wild Strike. Prismatic skills rotate between fire, cold, and lightning variants and will never pick the same element twice in a row, so as long as you're attacking or casting, at least twice within 2 seconds, you'll always be dealing maximum damage due to the element being rotated between at least 2 different types. You can do something like fire, cold, fire, but you'll never do fire, fire, cold. On the other hand, let's say you're a normal person who doesn't use Prismatic skills like a weirdo. How does it work? This is where damage ranges come in. Let's pretend that you want to deal lightning and cold damage, and you also want to use Trinity Support. How might you go about that? You'll want the skill's damage ranges to overlap. For example, if you deal 8 to 1000 lightning damage, whenever you deal damage with that skill, the game rolls a random number. At lowest, that number will be 8, at highest, that number will be 1000. If your skill's cold damage is 1200 to 1500, this doesn't work. It will always deal more cold damage than lightning damage, so you'll never gain proper resonance. Remember, you have to be dealing damage of at least 2 different elements for Trinity to properly gain resonance. On the other hand, if you deal 350 to 650 cold damage, you'll average 500, which is about the same as the 504 you average with lightning. But let's say it rolls the two random numbers, and it gets a 16 for the lightning and a 600 for the cold. You're dealing more cold damage than lightning damage. Therefore, you gain fire and lightning resonance. And on the next hit, you roll 400 for the cold. Still a pretty decent roll, but a bit below average. The lightning, though, rolls 502. Now, you've dealt more lightning damage than cold, thus you gain cold and fire resonance. In other words, you should constantly gain all three resonance types and be at 50-50-50, which is exactly where you want to be. So now that you know some of the basics of how Trinity Support works, in what situations might you want to use it? Well, first, if you're using a Prismatic skill, something like Elemental Hit or Wild Strike, and you're not locking it to a single element. This isn't a particularly good use, at least in the current meta, but I say this as of 3.16, and as of 3.17, Trinity Wild Strike could be the best build in the game. Because your skill will rotate between all available elements, and because it will never pick the same element twice, it's going to make sure that you're automatically fully enabling Trinity Support. Another way to do this is to use a skill that has two distinct parts, or two different skills. There are certain skills that are two-part abilities. Something like Explosive Arrow can very easily enable Trinity Support. The explosion is base fire damage, but when you hit an enemy with the arrow, that's just a bow hit based off of your weapon. So if you used a weapon that had some lightning damage, you do lightning damage when hitting enemies with the arrow, but then fire damage when the arrow explodes. Another way to do this is to use an attack that has its own flat damage, like Frostblades. Frostblades will always add flat cold, so if you use a weapon that has primarily lightning or fire damage, then you should get roughly a 50-50 split in your damage, and again, the damage ranges should overlap, but be sure to use Path of Building to check your actual damage ranges and make sure they can overlap. There's also a few things that you can do with conversion that I didn't talk about in this video because they're a little bit more complicated due to how conversion works. Just know if you convert exactly 50% to one element and 50% to another, the damage ranges will always be identical because it's the same base damage being rolled. So you need to add something with a range like fire to spells, cold to spells, or lightning to spells, or to attacks for that matter, if you wanted to use the conversion method for Trinity Support. Ever since the resistance buff a few leagues back, it's been notoriously difficult to get enough penetration on builds that deal mixed elemental damage. For a while, your only option was to use Shroud of the Lightless, but now with the elemental penetration support and with Trinity, you have a few more options, and you have some toolkits that work very well to enable Trinity Support. So after watching the video to this point, do you have a better understanding of how Trinity Support works? Have you used it in a past build? And if so, did you find it easy to use or complicated and confusing? And if you haven't used it before, do you plan to after watching this video? I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Thank you for watching. And again, a special thanks to my patrons and YouTube channel members. If you want to support me, you can do so by clicking the links down in the description below or on screen right now. You can also support by making purchases through my Nexus page. Or if you just want to chill and hang out, be sure to join the Discord. Again, links for everything are down in the description below. Thank you, and have a great day.